Welcome to Gurgle, a bite-sized podcast from the creators of Ad Nauseam. Looking to whet your appetite for the classics? Gurgle will tickle your taste buds and leave you wanting more. And now, from the vomitorium, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
All right, hey, we're gurgling.
Yes.
Yes, we're back. I think. Are we back in the gurgle mode now?
Temporarily.
Temporarily,
right?
okay.
But we got to keep this tight and to the point, remember?
That's right, I don't want to get off
the
rails.
announcer said it was bite-sized.
Okay, all right, so we're talking about the Palladium.
The Palladium,
Yes.
that's correct.
So the Palladium, I was reading, this came up in a book I was reading about
Mm-hmm.
kind of the history of late antiquity, and it was, it's always kind of fascinating me. I love stories where there's like an object that's prevalent in mythology, and then it kind of makes a transition to kind of a real world object,
Yes.
possibly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love things that kind of bridge that, and so this falls in that category.
The crystal skull.
Yes.
The Easter Island effigies.
Yes,
so on and so forth.
Exactly right. So the Palladium,
Yes.
for our listeners who might not be familiar, refers to this wooden statue of Athena that is in the citadel of Troy.
Yes, and Odysseus and Diomedes stole it from the citadel during their midnight raid.
Exactly right. There was not prophecy isn't the right word, but there was an oracle that said that Troy would not fall as long as it had the Palladium in their citadel.
Right.
Right.
This was the totem.
The totem. Right. So, so the scholars and others that have written about this kind of have speculated. What was this? Was it a kind of an anthropomorphic statue of Athena? Most think of it was more just kind of a crude wooden effigy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's you see lots of these kinds of things around the world, like a found object or like a meteorite or some sort of some stone is consecrated and considered to be sacred, and then it finds its place into a sacred space in a temple.
Right.
But over time, it becomes anthropomorphized into something more kind of concretely humanoid.
Yes, and it can even be sculpted and worked in that fashion so that it looks like such.
Exactly.
So the Greek word is a toxoanon,
Yes.
right? Toxoanon, an effigy, crude carving, something found in nature, fallen from heaven. Mm-hmm. We've seen something like this at Delphi, the omphalos.
The omphalos, yeah, right.
Supposedly fallen from heaven, and then it has on it pomegranates and other carved sorts of surface features.
Right.
I guess to make it look more appealing.
I guess so. Yeah. There's, remember on the one they keep outside at Delphi is just the plain one.
Right.
And it looks like an acorn. Kind of pointed out.
Very much.
The belly button of the world.
That's correct.
Right.
So in the place where I grew up, we're going to keep it tight and focused today, but in the place where I grew up, behind where I lived, there was a legend. I've never told you this. You'd like this. It has a certain flavor of liminality.
I'm already interested, yeah.
There was a legend that an iron ore meteorite had fallen back there.
Really?
Yes, a large lump of iron.
Did you go looking for it?
No, because I didn't hear the legend until I was much older, and the place where it would probably have been had been buried. There had been what's called a fence row. You know, the agricultural land used to be divided up into lots of rows because the plots were small.
Yeah.
And that's where you would dump all the stones and the stumps and so forth. Eventually, these things were buried so you could have lots of contiguous agricultural land.
Ah, okay.
And when this was buried, the meteorite went down in, apparently.
So it might still be
might still be there, but
there.
maybe too deep to be reached with a metal detector.
Gotcha.
But that's a toxoanon,
Exactly.
right? It's the kind of thing.
Right. So others have compared what the Palladium might have been, or how we're supposed to imagine it, with the statue of Athena Polias in the Erechtheion up on the Acropolis.
That's right.
So Athena was first worshipped there before she gets the big place in the Parthenon,
Right next door.
Right next door.
A little bit to the south.
Mm-hmm. And so some have thought that was also just kind of a crude wooden effigy. Tertullian is on record describing it, though. I mean, Tertullian, North African, right?
That's correct.
Right? Is there any record of him traveling to Athens?
No, but he was a well-known lawyer. Some of his work survives in the Justinian Pandex, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And his father was a well-known Roman. So either he or his father may have traveled, or it's just part of the lore.
Right. So he makes a reference to this statue in his Apologeticus, where he describes it as just kind of a crude effigy without kind of shape or form.
Right. So, section 16, the notes here say,
yep.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll read a little bit of Latin?
Yeah, please read it for us.
Pallas Attica, quae sine effigie rudi palo et informi ligno prostat.
So how would you render that? So we have Pallas.
Athenian palace. Yeah, she stands there, right? Which stands there, sine effigie rudi, without any rough appearance, in a simple and wooden shapeless form.
Right? So
a formless shape, something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I find that really interesting. It always makes me wonder. Okay, did Tertullian go to Athens? And if you could go there, could anybody kind of peek in on this statue?
Right.
So, but maybe he's just simply reporting the tradition about it.
One of the things that I think it points out is that even in antiquity, there was the concept of antiquity.
Right.
So they thought of themselves as advanced, as every generation does.
Yeah.
They looked back at our ancestors who worshipped this, unshaped wooden thing. We worship things that, have been worked by Polyclites and Praxiteles and so forth.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah. All right, so this Palladium is a talisman of protection. Mm-hmm. And whoever has the Palladium your city will never fall. So some stories associated with this is that the Palladium fell from heaven in responding to a prayer of Elis, a Trojan priest,
right?
From which we get Ilium, so a founder of Troy.
Yeah, one of the founding fathers, you might say.
Right, and so it's almost like the city kind of grows up around the Palladium,
mm-hmm.
right? And then later in kind of the Trojan War legends, Helenus, a Trojan priest, is captured by Odysseus outside the walls of Troy, and he's the one they kind of wear him down. They sit him down with the single light bulb hanging above, and they grill him. Good cop, bad cop.
Delilah with Samson.
Yeah.
Right? Just finally wears him down. He finally gives up the secret.
Right. And so he gives up the secret and says, yes, if you take the Palladium, then Troy will fall. And the story that we know of it survives from this the so-called Little Iliad. One of these pieces of the larger Trojan saga.
How many L's in that one?
In that Little Iliad, still just one.
Yes, right.
Right, exactly.
But two in the previous word. Maybe that's where the bleed over has come from. So this is part of the epic cycle, is that right?
Yeah.
Exists as fragments then.
Exactly right.
Okay.
But part of that cycle that if you stitch it all together, you can more or less tell the whole story. So in that, Odysseus disguises himself as a beggar, and it's Helen who tells him where exactly he needs to go.
Treasonous once again.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, Helen plays that complicated role of whose side is she really on?
That's right. Yeah, the pharmacon, right? The drugs that she's mixing. Odyssey Book 4. We got to send the listener, back to the Odyssey series.
Exactly.
Go back there, check it out, Book 4.
Right. And there's that story where she's imitating the wives, the voice of the wives of the men in the horse to drive them crazy.
That's correct.
Right. So
to try to get them to come out.
Right. So she's betraying the Greeks on one hand, she's helping the Greeks on the other hand. Right. Mysterious. Yep.
So Odysseus and Diomedes in their nighttime raid.
Yes.
Not unlike the nighttime raid of Nisus and Euryalus in Aeneid Book 9.
Yes, exactly.
Which we're going to get to.
Yep.
They sneak into that citadel and they steal the statue.
Yep. And that's kind of the first domino that to fall there. It's a favorite
for the destruction of the city. You're saying
that's what I'm saying.
That's the catalyst.
Yes. Yep. And so I was just doing some kind of clicking around in like Google Images. This was a favorite scene of vase painters where it's usually Diomedes who's carrying it, and then Odysseus is running alongside.
Okay. Why is that?
I don't know. Diomedes said usually the statue in these paintings is fairly formidable. It's very anthropomorphic.
Right.
He's holding it up above his head.
It's got to be anthropomorphized, otherwise nobody would know what it is.
He's carrying. What's he running with his log?
Right.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe Diomedes he's physically stronger than Odysseus, but I have no idea. But that's where kind of the story starts to shift into something kind of mythical, quasi-historical, into something maybe possibly actually historical.
Yeah. So Jeff, since you're helming this particular episode of Gurgle, was there an actual Palladium?
I think there was.
Really?
Or at least something that was later that was maybe later made and then claimed to be.
So this is history's mysteries.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So there were traditions that say, okay, what happened after Diomedes stole it? Right? Did he bring it back to his tent? Did he set it up on his mantle and back home?
Right. So bust the myth for us. Just some myth busting.
Well,
what's going on?
Some traditions say that it made its way to Athens.
Okay.
It's made its way to Argos, which is make some sense. I mean, there are traditions that. Let's say in Aeschylus's Agamemnon, he's the king of Argos, not Mycenae. So it winds up in the power center. Others say it winds up in Sparta. This could be used to kind of explain who's on the winning or the losing side of that conflict, right? And then, of course, as the power shifts further west, the tradition says that the Palladium finally made its way to Rome.
Yeah.
And here, I think this is where I would say, okay, this enters into something fairly secure in terms of historicity.
Okay.
And so in the Temple of Vesta, downtown Rome, you've seen it, right?
Of course,
that,
sure.
That kind of circular temple down there.
That's right.
The sources say that the Romans kept there. That's where they kept the eternal flame going.
Yep.
But they also kept the Palladium there as a way of kind of securing the protection of Rome for eternity. And there is a story of that. There was a fire at the temple in 214 BC.
Okay.
And it kept the Temple of Vesta catches on fire, and one Lucius Caecilius Metellus is blinded as he rushes into the temple to rescue the Palladium.
Huh.
So, and that, I mean,
an act of self-sacrifice and heroism.
Right.
We've got to save the Palladium, or Rome herself falls.
Right. And so, I mean, the aspects of it that he's blinded in doing this. I mean, I guess it could have happened.
This is the same individual who captured Hannibal's elephants.
Is it the same guy?
Yeah, same general.
Okay.
Very famous family, the Metelli.
Okay. All right. So,
I should tell you about it sometime.
Oh man! Wow. Man. We got to keep this short.
All right. Sorry.
Right. So he
one bad pun's okay.
Right. So, well, there might be some kind of mythic padding to the story.
Okay.
That seems to rest upon the fact that the assumption is, oh yeah, there was an object and it was rescued from the fire.
Okay.
So whether this had anything to do with an actual object at Troy, I would probably say probably not.
Okay.
But by this time, an object had been fashioned to kind of link history, to link Roman accomplishment, to link Roman ambition with this Greek mythic tradition that they so much wanted to be a part of.
Taking on a life of its own.
Yep.
Okay.
So then later on,
we got to fast forward, right?
We got to fast forward. Yeah. So in the 3rd century, later in the 3rd century, Elagabalus, one of my favorite emperors.
Yes.
Right.
What a name. So this is what, 280s, 270s?
Yes.
Was it earlier?
I'm not exactly sure.
But we're in the 3rd century AD.
Right.
After the Severan dynasty, after Septimius Severus. I think it's in the first half.
The first half. I think that's right. So
okay.
A good, nearly 500 years after that fire.
Right.
And so apparently he moves the Palladium and other sacred Roman objects to the Elagabalus.
Is there any mention of what these other objects are?
I don't know.
Was there like a coaster with felt on the bottom that would keep the Palladium in place so it wouldn't get bumped as you walk by?
Yeah, exactly. Like you find at the bottom of like your golf trophy.
Correct.
Right.
It wouldn't scratch the table of your, the surface of your marble table?
I'm sure that was part of it.
Okay.
Right.
So you say he took it to the Elagabalus?
Right. So that's what I think is his Rumpus Room or something like that.
Can you imagine how he would explain that to his wife? What are you building? It's an Elagabalus.
Right.
Every emperor has one. Why shouldn't I?
Exactly. I told you about this, honey.
That's right. Just go down the stairs. There's the big screen TV.
Right. So apparently this was a temple that he humbly dedicated to himself.
Okay.
Just up and above the forum in the northeast corner of the Palatine Hill.
So the Palatine Hill is where one can climb up after you go through the Arch of Titus.
Yep.
You go off to the left there and you walk up, and then the Aventine's not too far away.
Yep.
With the House of Livia, and then you can look down into the forum from
Yes.
that great vantage point. It's almost a precipice, right?
It is. Yep. It's great. And on the other side you can look down into the Circus Maximus, right?
Right.
But you're walking through the Tony neighborhood of ancient Rome,
The
right?
Beverly Hills,
Yep.
right? The Heritage Hill District, where you live here in Grand Rapids.
Well, okay. It
All
depends,
right.
depends on what section you're in, but
Moving along.
right. So he moves it there.
Okay.
And the next time it shows up is about a century later, Constantine.
Oh.
He takes the Palladium and he makes a show of moving it from Rome to Constantinople, which I think you could take as a
He's repatriating.
He's repatriating it. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying Rome's the past, Constantinople is where the future lies.
It's like taking the Elgin marbles back to Greece.
Yes.
It's a similar idea.
Yes, very good.
So Constantine is now kind of a hero,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So he apparently takes it there and he buries it under the column of Constantine, this monument to himself.
Conveniently named.
Right? In this oval shaped forum there. And that column is still there.
He didn't want a Constantinobalium?
Too much of a mouthful, I suppose. Right?
His own Rumpus Room?
So apparently he buries it there, and that's more or less where it disappears from history. So there has been, so as I was reading about this, one of the I questioned, has anybody looked for this? And of course people have looked for it.
Right.
And so
But has anyone found it?
Nobody has found it.
Okay.
Right. So apparently let me just check the, the report is from 1955, but there was some archaeological explorations near and under the column in the middle part of the previous century,
right?
Which was looking for the Palladium and other objects again that probably Constantine took from the Elagabalus,
right?
And nothing.
The felt covered cozy for the
right
Palladium,
right? Nothing was found, but I mean, Could it then explain why, by some calculations, Constantinople survived in Roman hands until 1453?
For a very long time.
Very long time,
right?
And did the Turks take that Palladium? Is it somewhere in...
I don't know. But, I mean, that was the Turkish capital, so they would have kept it there.
That's true. Right, exactly.
They would have kept it there. I mean, and it still stands in another form. It's a very old city. But
right.
Who knows? So that's maybe where the Palladium is.
Maybe where the Palladium is.
Though, if really made of wood, it's got to be destroyed by now.
Long destroyed, right? But I think that between kind of the Elagabalus and the Metelli, one of the Metelli,
right,
and what Constantine's actions, we are talking about there was some actual object.
Okay.
Yeah, and probably put on display, and that move from Rome to Constantinople as a way of kind of assuring the people that this is a serious, legitimate, and final move.
Fascinating. Well, that's a gurgle, Jeff. We have to wrap it up.
We do, yeah. So we need to mention a couple of things before we go.
That's correct.
Tell us quickly about the Moss Method, Dave.
Yeah, so you can study Greek online, mossmethod.com. Check out my program. Takes you from neophyte to erudite.
Yes.
We want to say thank you to Hackett Publishing, who sponsors all of our activities, hackettpublishing.com.
And also Ratio Coffee, which you can find at ratiocoffee.com.
Yeah, listen to some other episodes to get the coupon code.
Yes. And tell us also about LLPSI.
That's correct. If you want to study Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata with me, go to latinperdiem.com/LLPSI and check out this high-value expert program. We need to say thank you.
Yes.
To Mishka Fernando for putting together all of our mixing and sound so wonderfully. We've got to thank Ken Tamplin for the intro and outro music, that ripping guitar.
Yes, and also to our wonderful announcer. Let's give him a little
Brian.
shout out. Brian.
Thanks, Brian, for giving us the wonderful voiceover. That's a wrap on this gurgle.
Thanks for listening.